Hey, you're back on Outside the Belly. I'm John Fredericks, your blowtorch of free speech in America, your oracle of the deplorables, truth and clarity right here. Todd Sheets, Alfredo Ortiz joining us for another segment. Your calls always 888-480-JOHN, 888-480-5646. Don't forget our big debate in Virginia. That's going to be on January 15th, 8 to 10 a.m. You don't want to miss that, right? That's going to be live. 4 candidates vying for Republican Party of Virginia chairman. Republican Party of Virginia in and of itself an oxymoron. They don't have one. We'll see what happens. Johnny Reed and David Botkins are going to be moderating that 8 to 10 a.m. across our network. Do not want to miss that. Got Jane Timkins coming up. Jane, we're a little bit behind. Hang with us. We're going to flow you over if we can to the next segment. And thanks for being with us. So you don't want to miss that debate. And but I tell you what, right now in Virginia, thing is a disaster, but we got to get rid of these skill games. They're still illegal. They're still out there. There's going to be more bills trying to pass them. This is a scourge on Virginia. These things are gross. They rip you off. They're not regulated. Half the time you can't even get paid out on them. But yet, you know what? They're still there, even though they're illegal. Miera said it was illegal. Youngkin said it was illegal. It's illegal. If you see one of these, if you're in a convenience store or a truck stop and you see one of these illegal skill games, call your local sheriff. Give them their coordinates. Tell them to get them out of there. These things are preying on the elderly. They're totally illegal. They're disgusting. And they're probably one of the most evil things going on in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And now they're trying to put slots on your iPhone, right? That's the other thing they're trying to do. That if you think these skill games are not bad enough, now they want to put gambling on your iPhone in slots. That's not regulated either. Unbelievable what these people are doing. I'm all for gambling. I'm all for casinos. I've been an advocate of it forever. I'm all for online gaming, but it's got to be regulated. You got to go through this system. The state has to get their percentage. There's got to be rules and laws that go with it. Like I'm in Washington, D.C., MGM, Caesars, DraftKings have no problem with it, but it's all regulated, right? If you're outside of an area that they offered, you can't get through. You can't put money in. You can't get money out. You can't make a bet. These things are regulated. And these skill games and these slot games, these things are just ripping off young people, elderly people that don't understand the fact that there's no protections in place. So let's get rid of them in Virginia. Tell the General Assembly that. Okay, let's get back to Todd and Alfredo Ortiz. Alfredo, the president and CEO of the Job Creators Network. Go to jcn.com. jcn.com, and Todd Sheets is our noted economist and the best-selling author of the 2008 crash, What Really Happened. And you can read Todd on Substack for free. Just put in Todd Sheets, Substack comes right up. Let's start with cut 16 here, guys. I'm sorry. What did I say? Cut 14. Tyler. I'm sorry, Tyler. It is. I just had it. Whatever was on this thing. Let's see. Well, I lost my place. Yeah, it's going to be cut 14 on the economy. Nope, I got the wrong one. Forget that. Sorry.
You said 16 earlier.
Yeah, 16. Go ahead, roll that.
We've been above 2%, 50% above 2% for 2 years then. The Fed has totally missed that target, and we've just cut 4 or 5 times. So that makes no sense. That then you move the goalpost to 3%.
No. I don't think we have moved the goalpost at all. I think the debate that we've been having at the committee is, we know that tariffs affect goods import prices. Do you count that as a one-time effect, or do you think it leads to something more persistent? That's the debate that we've been having.
Right, but the persistent inflation hasn't really had anything to do. It was already persistent long before the tariffs.
Because of the COVID effects. I agree with you, Joe. I mean, that's why it's not. Some people say it's so obvious we should be ignoring tariff inflation. Inflation's on its way back down, and just be cutting dramatically to support the labor market. I'm not there either.
But
all right, guys, if you look at inflation right now and you take out the height it was under Joe Biden, it's coming down dramatically. Tariffs have had no effect. Alfredo, I'll start with you here. Are you in favor of another rate cut because of a cooling job market?
Well, so we got to take a step back and look at a couple of facts, right? So first of all, when you look at the small business community, they represent 2/3 of new job growth in America. And so when you have 33 million small business owners that employ about 60 million people, if you want true job growth, you've got to basically stimulate the small business community. And they've been really still hit with high prices, right? That is the reality. And access to credit and the cost of the credit when you can access it. This is still a real issue for our small business community. Now, thank goodness for on July 4th, President Trump signed the One Big Beautiful Act. And that had two major components to it, provisions for our small business owners that were truly game changers for them. Immediate expensing, and also the permanency of the 20% deduction. You and I have had multiple discussions over the years about the benefit of that. It's benefited your show. You know that firsthand,
Right.
how beneficial it has been. And so those have been truly tremendous impacts. And we're going to start seeing that, I truly believe, in 2026 when all that really comes online. Our small business owners were really waiting for that July 4th signature. They had plans in place. They were already looking at investing in it, but they were waiting to see if that was actually going to take place. They're pulling the trigger, but again, the access to credit and the cost of credit is still holding them back somewhat. Powell's never, we might see two more rate cuts, a quarter point from him before he leaves. I think, once one of the Kevins actually takes over, I think you're going to see substantially more rate cuts, but we still got to bring them down. Vis-a-vis the rest of the world, we're still higher than we should be. And look, inflation is in check, and there is no tariff inflation. That never really truly came about. We're still suffering from the hangover of the Biden administration. And remember that inflation is cumulative in nature, right? And so his peak was about 9.5%, 10%, but that's what's cumulative, right? So that means that price of egg, which went from $1 before Biden to $1.50, is still high. So even though Trump has been able to maintain on a relative basis inflation in check, prices are still high, right? And that's the reality to the small business owner and their consumers. And so I think once we start seeing real wages, which we are seeing them now actually rise, and a lot of that is, I think, frankly, due to a lot of his immigration enforcement. A lot of that cheap labor is basically leaving. And so you actually are seeing rising wages. And again, once you start seeing all this other investment in small businesses take place, you're going to start seeing more hiring and higher wages. And that's where you're going to really see the real wage growth continue to rise in 26.
Todd, you have been less than enthusiastic about continual rate cuts as a fear that might drive or not drive inflation down to the extent you'd like it to be. But the job market is cooling a little bit, and inflation really has come down from the Biden levels pretty dramatically, and the tariffs have had no impact on it. Has your position on that, Todd, changed at all?
Yeah, it really hasn't. And I think one of the things that's occurred to me as we've talked about these things, and I agree with almost everything Alfredo was saying, one of the things that occurs to me is when the Federal Reserve, we've talked over and over again about how over the last 20 years, they pursued these artificially low interest rates with various rationales and various consequences throughout that period. But one of the underappreciated problems that gets created is if you run an artificially low interest rate regime, and then small businesses who are borrowing at these lower interest rates, or consumers who are buying homes or whomever, then they are setting their total cost structure and their business dynamics and their pricing structure around this model with the expectation that they can continue to operate with very low interest rates. And when you get back into a period when inflation moves back up, and it's not ridiculously high, but Alfredo hit the right point on this also. And as we've talked about before, if we were in a healthy economy that did not go through the Biden inflation, which elevated prices, then 3% inflation wouldn't be such a concerning issue. But it is a concerning issue when it comes on top of those prices. So I think let's just make it, if your income's at, let's just keep it super simple, this isn't reality, $200 a month, and your costs are at $100 a month, and then your costs go to $150, but your income is still at $200, you are getting squeezed. And if the $150 is still growing and the $200 still isn't growing, you're getting squeezed even more. And I think this is what we're seeing rippling through in the last several months in this big affordability thing that the Democrats have jumped on to make such a big issue out of, and with some success. And I think it's important. We have to be very vigilant on the inflation side. If that runs away from us, then we're looking at interest rates really having to move up. And right now, even though they are high relative to recent standards, they are actually low relative to historical standards. So my overall belief is still we're in a phase of having to adjust back towards normal interest rates, given where inflation is at. And the best way to look at that, as we've talked about before, is the real federal funds rate, which is very low by historical standards right now. So I'm still cautious in this area, even though I agree with the macro picture Alfredo put out, and my objectives are the same as his. I want the most dynamic environment that we can create for growth and job growth and real income growth for those people.
Alfredo, what is your rebuttal to that?
Yeah, so I think one of the things we also have to remember, though, alongside with inflation, what Trump has done is how has he brought? We got to ask the question: how has he kind of stabilized that? Right, deregulation is a big component of this, right? I mean, remember under the Biden administration, $2.1 trillion basically of hidden taxes through regulation was imposed on our American economy. So that's getting lifted. And then also his attack on, all the domestic energy production policies that really thwarted domestic energy production, right? Trump has done a tremendous job of lifting a lot of that. And so we're getting energy price down. We're I think, now a net exporter of natural gas, for example. If I'm not mistaken, Todd, please correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But, we are now basically back in the position where we are in control of our energy costs. And energy is probably the one input that really truly flows through every single element of the cost structure that our American economy faces, right? And so as it's not only gasoline prices, which I think in 40 states now we're about under $3 a gallon, right? That's great for the American consumer, but that's also great for our small business owners and businesses in general. I mean, think about trucking, for example, transportation, right? I mean, it is now cheaper to move goods from left to right, from east to west, north and south, right? Because gasoline's cheaper, right? But everything now that takes energy, which is basically everything, is coming down in pricing because of that. And so between the deregulation, the drill baby drill, these are major elements. And I have to say the one quick plug, John, if I may, the House just passed some legislation related to healthcare. There are two provisions in there. One in particular for our small business owners that we championed when it was Secretary of Labor Acosta had championed, and I was alongside with him on this one, is the association health plans. That is truly a game changer for our small businesses. It basically puts them at level footing to their much bigger competitors because it allows them to basically group together and get group rates. You, John, probably know how expensive now it is to get health insurance for our small business owners and the employees. I mean, just at our organization alone, our rates have actually jumped 50% in the past 2 years. So our small businesses can't afford it. So we got to keep on doing things like that to be able to drive further costs down for our small business owners, which again generates 2/3 of new jobs.
So look, I like the bill that was passed last night. It was a Republican bill, and it basically allowed group exchanges to lower costs. But here's what's going to happen. It's going to go to the Senate. It's dead in the water because they'll never get the 60 votes. And the Senate Democrats don't want to bring prices down. They want to leverage people suffering so they can win the midterm. So they're going to vote this out. They're going to say they want a 3-year extension for Obamacare subsidies. Those have failed, right? So they're going to do that. Todd, I don't know if there was a better time for the Republicans to invoke getting rid of the filibuster rule. And now they can say, we're doing it to bring health costs down because the Democrats want them to go up so they can win the midterm. So they want you to suffer for their power. This is about the simplest argument you could possibly make, but they don't have the balls to do it. Why?
To get rid of the filibuster?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's just been, a part of accepted operating model in Washington for so long that everybody's afraid to take that move. Look, I think Trump was right. We can say if the Democrats elect a far left person or somebody like Biden who is masquerading as a centrist but is going to be, run by the far left part of the party, which is in all likelihood where they're going. They still control the party. You can expect that they are going to do everything possible to fight back. We're talking packing the Supreme Court. We're talking getting rid of the filibuster. They will pull out all the stops to enact the agenda and counteract Trump's moves. So from that perspective, I think I'd leave it up to the people in the Senate to figure these things out, but they need to be taking that into consideration because that is where things are headed.
Okay. Listen, I want to thank you guys for being with us on Outside the Beltway. You can follow Todd Sheets very easily. Just Todd Sheets on Substack. Go to Substack, Todd Sheets. And of course, Alfredo Ortiz, the president and CEO of the Job Creators Network. Go to joinjcn.com. Joinjcn.com. Jane Timken coming in next. Ohio fraud. Walsh resigns. What the hell's going on? The Jane Meister next.